caliphate capital to which your Mahdi will rule the earth from. The scriptures clearly say that the Antichrist will be this character, what you are waiting for. We do hope that you repent and you believe in the Son of God, for He is the only way for salvation, and there is no other way. For He died for our sins. He was nailed to the cross, He was buried, and on the third day He rose from the grave to give us the hope of eternal life. And that's the only way for salvation. This is Martis Ministry, Prophecy in the News. God bless.
There's a set of morals in here that we no longer abide by. So I'm going to read something to you because I don't know who here has heard this. And I'm going to go through this very briefly, and then I'm going to jump right in the middle of this here, and I'm going to tell you where the danger is coming from. So if you can bear with me while I get my 20-year-old eyes working here, it'd be good. Okay? I'm going to read the Declaration of Independence. Has anybody ever heard that? Yep. Several of you have heard it. Well, you're going to hear it again. But you're going to get in. But you're going to Command Sergeant Major's abbreviated reading. It says, "We, ladies and gentlemen, mean us, the American people, not some bumbleheads in Washington D.C. It's us, not them." You're going to find out why I'm a drill sergeant too. I actually sing to 400 and 500 people. I know I got some former Marines in here because I spot them. It says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." That does not mean affirmative action. That means we're all equal. And then we work through life to become unequal. Some of us get to be lawyers. So far about that, like a car salesman maybe, I don't know. But we're all equal. God does not respect persons. So we have no business passing hate crime laws. None. Because we're setting aside a group of people special. We've got a Supreme Court out of control with the laws on sodomy, and that's what they are. The word gay just means happy. It does not mean wrong. Ooh, drill sergeant coming out of me. All created, that all are endowed by their Creator, that would be Jesus Christ, with certain unalienable rights. What God gives you, ladies and gentlemen, only God can take back. I'm going to get into the definitions of law in just a second. Where am I at? Inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, that be us, derived from the just powers from the consent of the government. That means us. We give them the consent to rule over us. They don't take it. We need to kick some of them. Yeah. And you might see my killer instinct come out here shortly, so hold me off here. It tends to come out of me when I get talking about this. Where am I at? Consent of the government. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. That means we can get rid of it. And you're not an extremist by doing it. You have the right. You take the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and the Constitution is a Christian document. And I'm gonna read, where am I at? Where's it at? Where's it at? Somebody done stole the most lethal weapon in the world. Yeah. And I'm going to read something to you. That's the only verse I'm going to read out of here, because I don't know who all is here. Okay? But this here is the foundation for this. You can't separate them. I don't know what them black robe perverts don't understand down there. But they need me to talk to them. I'll square them away for you. It'll take me about a minute. Yeah. And to institute new government lying its foundations on such principles and organizations, powers in such form as to them shall seem likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that government long established should not be changed for light and transient cause. And accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and upsurtions, pursuing invariably the same objective, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government. This is from the founding of our country. This is our birth certificate. And we're letting it slip right through our fingers because a lot of pastors don't have the testosterone to throw it at you in your face.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
There was a time in this country when pastors wore a military suit underneath of their robe. They were called Minutemen. They were the first ones on the battleground. What has happened to us, ladies and gentlemen? Where's it gone? It takes one generation, that's 50 years about, to destroy a nation. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. We are in very, very deep trouble. Very deep trouble. I want to talk about who's the commander-in-chief of the military. It's not the President of the United States. He is not the commander-in-chief until war has been declared. War has never been declared since World War II. And I have had 9 combat tours. And each one of them has cost me 18 months of my life. I've done my fair share of killing. I'm tired of it. And you're either going to go to the ballot box or you're going to go to the bullet box in the next 18 months. If you got that time. I'm dead serious. I'm a former Green Beret. I know exactly what I'm talking about. This ain't no game, folks. And I'm going to read to you in just a second. The President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy. Notice it doesn't talk about the Marines and the Air Force. There's a reason for that. Of the United States and the militia of the several states. When called into actual service. So if they're not in service, who's he commanding? If they're not in war, who's he commanding? I'm going to tell you. Glad you asked that question. Okay? Where am I at here? I'm going to skip that one. Y'all don't want to hear that anyway. Okay. Let's see. Section 4. The United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a republican form of government. Do you know what the definition of a nation is under international law? Anybody have any idea what that is? I'm glad you told me, because I'm going to tell you. Number 1 is they have a sovereign flag. Does Missouri not have a flag?
Yes.
Okay? You have the second thing. A sovereign nation must be able to prosecute a country for treason. I know some of you know what this is, because I see you in here. I know who you are. Okay?
Must be able to prosecute a right.
Treason. Missouri has a state law for treason. How many other nations do you see doing this? Nobody. So you have a national flag. Missouri has a flag. You must be under international law, have the ability to try a person for treason. If you go to Russia, only Russia can try you for treason. If you go to China, only China can try you for treason. So why can't all 50 states try you for treason if they're not considered sovereign? Does that make sense? That's right. So we have that. The second thing you have is you have to have a commonly dressed military with a bona fide uniform. You can't have a bunch of ragtags walking around with a bunch of different uniforms on. So if y'all going down that road, you're going down the wrong way. You need a common uniform. Missouri has that. It's not the National Guard, by the way. They lost that in 1940 when they accepted federal funds.
Right.
There's 2 kinds of militia, the called out and the non-called out. And 2 people can call the militia out, if I understand it right, the governor or the sheriff of the county. 2 most powerful positions there is. But the National Guard does wear the big bear. So that is their uniform. So they claim they are the militia. No, they are not. They haven't been the militia. That's why it's called national. The militia is made up of every bodied man. 18 to 65 in a county. It ain't them people over in Washington, D.C. It's here. Now, I can never be part of it because I'm a federal trooper. I'm retired federal service. I cannot join a militia unit. But I can advise. I can do that. Okay? So those are the things that make up a nation. So Missouri has its own flag. It can try you for treason. It has a common military. And they can try you under a uniform code of military justice within the militia. So it's very valid. So we are a sovereign nation according to our founding fathers. And under the 9th and 10th Amendment, the 9th Amendment, you have sovereign rights from the state as an individual. You have a right to marry who you want. You have a right to live where you want. You have a right to train for what you want. You have a right to do those things. The 10th Amendment means the states are sovereign from the federal government. The federal government has no business coming in there telling us what to do. Unless it specifically is given to them by this. I just read it to you. If it's not in here, they can't do it. They have no right sending our young sons all over the world because he's not the commander-in-chief. Congress commands the military. Congress doesn't. Not the president, because there's no declared war. Because I have fought everything from Vietnam till now. I've been through all of them. Every single one of them. And there's not a one of them a declared war. Why are you not upset about that? Why is people not jumping up and down about that? Blaine Lukenmeyer out there where I live is an absolute idiot. Roy Blunt and Claire McCaskill won't even talk to me. They say, you're an extremist. I say, amen. Okay? And I'm real good with a rifle. My best shot is 1,875 meters. I got me a gold star on that one. That's a fact. You run from me, you will die tired. I'm dead serious, folks. When are we going to get back to this? Back to our birth certificate. Speaking of birth certificate, this is a pet peeve of mine. I got a friend over here I've known for years. This is really a pet peeve. I'm not going to dime you out, James. On my birth certificate, it says my father's name, John William Page, our address, and my mother's name, Gladys Marie Page, address. Then it has my name. And down here it says Caucasian male. I went down and got me a new birth certificate because somebody wanted the police department. I was a white male. I said, whoa, wait a minute here. This evolution must be true. How did I become a white male from a Caucasian male? There's a reason for that if you understand psychological warfare. It's taken away your humanity, which makes the soldier who's going to kill you feel much easier. Now, I know this is really, I can't get too deep into it because I don't have the time.
Right.
But the first thing they do when they want to kill you is they start changing who you are. They take away your identity. A horse is the same as a pony. A girl is the same as a woman. We know that's all bull. It's not true. So I'm sitting there looking at that. Wait a minute. I got two birth certificates here. One says Caucasian, one says what? She says, well, they mean the same. I said, well, then why did you change it?
Right.
Come on, Muttonhead, tell me. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Where am I? I'm getting wound up here now. Hold on. I've done talked about the 9th and 10th Amendment, so I'm not going to dwell on that. But I do want to read some scripture to you, and where we get Madison, who was the principal architect of the Constitution. In Isaiah chapter, I believe, let me get to it here, 33, verse 22. If you have a Bible, Isaiah 33, 22. Don't worry, I'm not going to preach to you. I'm not a preacher. Isaiah 33, 22, I believe. I've carried this little Bible with me wherever I go. They used to issue these to you, but they no longer do that. Incidentally, when Mr. Reagan became president, he issued these to everybody. And as soon as George Bush the first got in, he took them all back.
Yep.
Okay? But let me get to Isaiah. Somebody beats me there. Would you read it, whoever gets there first? Isaiah 33. Or I got it, I think. 33:22. Now listen to what he says, and you can take Madison's writings and you can refer to this. This is not my opinion. This is fact. Okay? Isaiah chapter 33, verse 22. Listen to what it says. For the Lord is our judge. The Lord is our lawgiver. The Lord is our king. 3 branches of government. That's a fact. Madison refers to this. And by the way, Jefferson had nothing to do with the U.S. Constitution. He was in France. He wasn't even in America. He wrote the Declaration of Independence, period. Madison was the principal architect of our birth certificate. The problem we got is people do not understand what's on their birth certificate. And we're about to lose it. We are very, very close to losing it. Does everybody understand where it's? Isaiah 33:22. For the Lord is our judge, that is the judiciary. The Lord is our lawgiver, that's Congress. The Lord is our king, that's the president. That's not my imagination. I want to pass out, to make sure I get these back. There may be a cop in here who's got sticky fingers or something. This is the proposed new Constitution that has already been drafted. It was ordered under George Bush. Can I get somebody else to... Colonel, could you pass this around for me? I need those back. That is only one draft of 8 drafts that are going on right now. They started under... Just take a quick look at it, because I'm going to put it up here if I can get to it. That's only one draft of many drafts. The new Constitution is all ready to go. They only need the right incident to bring it down. And they're working on that right now. We're not very far away from an event that's going to bring what you call martial law. That term will never be used, by the way. Yep. Emergency police powers will be. Just take a quick look at it. Now, you can go to the... Please do not hang on to it. Pass it. I'll come by and take it out of your hand if I see you holding it too long. I will do it. I got in an argument with a man when he started going through it page by page. And I said, hey, Huckleberry, move it on. He wouldn't do it, so I took it out of his hand. So I will do it. Pass it on, because I'm going to put it up here. By the way, I'm not known for my personality, so I don't mean to offend nobody.
Can we just look that thing up on Google?
Yes, you can. You can get it yourself. Did anybody read the USA Today? Well, this little homosexual sodomite here? Just incidentally, there are 4 sodomites on the Supreme Court. Has anybody read this? Farmer Justice Stevens wants to change the Constitution. And he lists 6 things in here that have to go. Number 1, the Second Amendment. Why would he pick that one out? Because he's an idiot. No, he's not an idiot. Man knows what he's doing. You can read this yourself right there. You can read it yourself. It's in today's. This is today. I have a liturgy of this stuff to put to you as fast as I can. We are in great, great peril. It says, change the Second Amendment. Yeah? Change the 8th Amendment. You know what the 8th Amendment's for? Okay? Hope you all do. If you don't, you're going to find out. Removing the First Amendment clause about religious freedom. Who do you think they're targeting on that? Christians. Okay? Even if you're not a Christian, this ought to concern you. It ought to really get you upset. The states must become submissive to the federal government in all aspects. Really? By the way that we're being run, I would say that's probably already done. Allow Congress to states to perform federal duties in emergencies. In other words, they want to be able to send everybody anywhere they want. Anywhere they want. If you can give me just a moment, I'm going to get into this something else here now because I want to throw some of this up on the board. But in the meantime, I'm going to do this. I got it already going already. Get into this. I want to show you something here. I'm kind of a one-man army here. You're not going to see this slide anywhere in the world. What I would like for you to do is I'm going to pass these 2 around. Do not steal them. That's all I got. I will break your arms. Okay. This is a Secretary of the Army in my last few months in Africa. Okay. Secretary Hillary Clinton was there. Okay. This is what the world's going to start to look like by 2015. How far is that away? It's not very far, is it? That means you better get prepared, folks. That's the only slide in the world like that. You won't find it nowhere in the world. I snapped that with a little camera. I was in that office that you see. That's the Secretary of the Army. He said in 2015 events are going to start happening. That's going to transform us into this. Now, you've seen the Constitution. I'm not blowing smoke up your backside, folks, because you ain't got nothing I want. And I'm not afraid of a man in here. You don't intimidate me. So I'm not, that's true stuff. This is going to happen. It cannot be stopped. It's not going to stop until you get in touch with your state legislators and get up on their backside. You got to start teaching your children. You need to get that 5- and 6-year-old and teach them their birth certificate, and you need to start pounding it into them. You got to make your man up. You got to make your mind up to man up or get out. Lead, follow, or move. This is serious business. There's going to be a lot of blood, folks. Because you're looking at one 60-year-old man ain't going to go along with it. Been there, done that. If I die, I go to heaven. What they going to do, kill me?
Amen.
Hell, I died a long time ago.
Could you just say one more time, what does this represent?
This represents the world's been broken down into 10 regions.
Oh.
I'm glad you brought. The world has been broken down into 10 regions. This is one of the models, just one. It's probably going to change between now and 2020. By 2020, this will be in effect. The United States has been subdivided into 10 regions. Everything is 10. Everything is 10. Okay? Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri are Zone 7. The boundaries and the county boundaries have been erased. That's why you see all these joint task force on police. The policemen don't know this. And when I talk to them, they say, "Okay, Paige,
Yep.
you got
Just like
PMS or some crap, I don't know, whatever they call that."
Dan, are these the same as the FEMA regions?
I don't know about that, sir. I just know what I know on here.
I mean, the regions of the states.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never seen that, so I can't say. But I do know that the United States has been broken down into 10 sub-regions. Missouri, Iowa, Kansas is Zone 7. The counties are being erased. Police departments are becoming one. Everything has to become one. And it's going to happen. Have you noticed the school district problems in St. Louis County? Have you noticed that Normandy School District and all that are all in serious trouble? And I forgot to bring this to you. I apologize to you. It's a book by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Anybody know who he is?
Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Yeah.
Right.
He wrote a book called The Gulag Archipelago.
Right.
You familiar with that? In there, he lays out a plan. And what he said was, you have to build educational barracks to get the kids to go to so they can have diversity. You are about to see a proposal probably in the next 4 or 5 years where they are going to build barracks, educational campgrounds for kids, and everybody's going to turn it over to them. And then what started happening, he just talks about how they would let the kids come home 1 week in the month. Then they kept it to 1 week in the month. Then they expanded it to every 6 months, and then once a year. And then what the kids started doing was spying on the parents.
Yep.
And guess what happened to the parents? They went to the Gulag. You know where the Gulag was at? It was in Siberia. That's where you all going to go. If you don't start talking to your children. Get away from the stupid TV and the ball games. The house is burning down. You don't have time, ladies and gentlemen. 2015, everything up to this is coming down. It's falling down all around you. But yet grown men will stand for hours and spend hundreds of dollars on grown men playing a child's game. I guess they like looking at men in tight pants. I don't know. I don't know what the problem is. I really don't get it. The average football ticket last year cost $247 per person. This year they said that this game, Super Bowl game, was the most expensive in world history. And people went bankrupt to go see it. How stupid can you get?
Right.
Should you not be a good steward of what you've been given? The day is going to come when grown men are going to cry and wish they were never born because they didn't spend time with their daughters. They didn't spend time with their sons, but they stayed some stupid game down in Busch Stadium. Doesn't make sense. So that's right there. That's where we're going. Let me see if I can get out of this. Out of this one here, I want to show you another one. The man you're looking here is Rear Admiral Losey. Okay? I'm going to show you some slides in just a second of something that's going to greatly affect you. He is the chief SEAL of all U.S. SEALs. Okay? He's a very good man, but he's hard as nails. He's smiling there, but he never smiled at me. He's always telling me to do something. So I'm going to sit down here just for a second, try to operate this so we can get through this thing real quick. Okay? Then I'm going to put it on go. Now this here is Command Master Chief Robert Audis. He is my grade. He is a Navy E9. Him and I was the highest ranking people on the whole African continent. I was a Command Sergeant Major for AFRICOM. He was a Command Master Chief of all naval forces. He worked for Admiral Losey, and I worked for Admiral Losey. He had control of all the SEALs. I had control of all the Rangers and Green Berets, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Very good man, hard man. And he told me on this trip that you're seeing right here, he says, I'm going to retire and I get back. I'm not going to be part of this. I'm not going to be, and then I'm going to tell you about 9/11, what really happened to the World Trade Towers. See, a lot of things you all don't know about. This here is the Chinese, it's a Chinese mobile concrete fracturing. We built the road from, if you know eschatology, and I hope that you do. Anybody ever heard Psalms 83? Anybody familiar with that? You know Armageddon? Armageddon is not one battle. Armageddon is 3 battles. Armageddon is a war, but there's 3 battles. In Psalms 83, Russia invades Israel. They are beat back. 8/5 of their army are killed. They go all the way back to Siberia. Is that right? Know your Bible? Amen. Okay. The second battle is with the king of the east. That'd be China. They come down with 200,000 armed. That 200,000 cells. That's 200 million. They're the only people right now on earth that can field that. Something you may not know about is all the wild horses in American West for the past 10 years have been shipped over there. This road that I'm going to show you starts in China and ends at the mouth of the Euphrates River in Iraq. Do you know what this means? Are you seeing where I'm going with this?
MRS.
Pardon?
Main route of supply.
Do what?
It's an MRS. Main
No,
route of supply.
no, it's not MRS. Do you understand the significance of this?
No.
That's where the army's going to come from that's going to invade Israel for the second battle. The final battle is when the Lord himself comes back and kills everybody. Okay? That's how close this is. And I'm going to put this on here in just a second, but I'm going to show you a couple more things, okay? This is the this is the South Korean SEAL team captain, commander, okay? This is a ship that I was on. Actually looked pretty good there.
Getting a little gray there.
That's just tread mileage. Now this here is Kenya. I had my own airplane. I had me a Learjet. I said, I want to go find where that illegal aliens claim to be my president, my undocumented president lives at. So I flew to Africa, and right there, and I went to our undocumented president's home. He was born in Kenya. Okay, I'm going to show it to you. This is not my opinion. That's just a little closer. It says Kenya right there. See? Incidentally, Army Green Berets are the only ones authorized to wear civilian clothes in combat. We can kill you any way we want. Up close, kiss you, whatever we want. Green Berets are the only ones trained in unconventional warfare and counterinsurgency. SEALs are not, Marines are not, we are. We are the premier military force. Period. Well, this is me again. This guy here, I liked him. If I was to ask you this question, don't answer it. Who would you want to be murdered by, or who would you want to be killed by? Somebody frowning or somebody smiling? I said, man, why are you smiling? He said, I like my work. He was the chief SEAL for the South Korean Army. That man could kick you in the head and then cut your head off and smile at you, and he'd sit down there and eat spaghetti afterwards. I'm dead serious. That man would kill you and smile at you. Little background here. This here is the ship I served on. That'd be me right there. Okay.
Are you saying they're mixing all the armies? They're bringing in the Russians and the
Yes,
Chinese
they are.
to kill us?
Yes, they are. This here was our CIA base. I'm sorry. Let's see here. If you notice that name, right here, what's it say?
Arma.
Yeah, well, they forgot to spell the B right. It's Obama. See, Obama went to school here. I'm going to show you this. This is the school right here.
Yep.
Actually, I'm African. I'm just real well. I've been in a cave for a couple of weeks. I got real light complected. Okay. Let me see. I'm going to put this on slide projection here, and then I'm going to get into something else. Let you look at that for a few minutes. Let me see. Where's my notepad? There it is. Just kind of look at that while I'm talking to you about some things. Right now, there are three phases that a society goes through. One is persecution. That means your faith is being challenged. Everybody mocks you. Everybody ridicules you. They stand for nothing. If you take a stand against sodomy, abortion, you are a terrorist, ladies and gentlemen. The next phase is prosecution. There's a couple out there in New Mexico right now that are being prosecuted and put out of business and were arrested because they refused to take pictures of sodomites. What about my freedom of religion from that? In the military right now, you have open sodomy, people holding hands, swapping spit together. Sick. It's pitiful. You got women trying to be... By the way, and I deeply resent this, we've had our first female Green Beret. Of course, they had to redo the qualifications. We've had our first Marine infantry officer come out. Of course, they had to redo the qualifications. What's wrong here? We have our first female Ranger. What happened here? Something's wrong. So the next phase, after you have persecution, prosecution, the final phase is execution. In the scriptures, does it not teach you about the four horsemen of the apocalypse? You have a white horse and a pale horse. The pale horse is actually beryl green. Do you know what the color of Islam is? Green. Does it not say whoever refuses to take the mark will be beheaded? Is that not true? Do you know how the Muslims take care of you? They cut your head off. Obama is allowing hundreds of thousands of them to come in every week.
Yep.
The only passive Muslim is a Sufi. Sufi only. They are passive until they get around a more dominant Muslim. Then they will kill you. Muslims are passive until they gain parity with you or they exceed you in numbers. And they will kill you.
Yep.
Just some thoughts here for you. With relation to the Constitution, there are three views of law. There is the law of nature. Two men cannot make a baby. It takes a man and a woman, the law of nature. Okay? What goes up must come down. That's nature. Then there is called the natural law. And ladies and gentlemen, if you don't remember anything else tonight, please remember these things. The natural law comes from God. Whatever God gives you, only God can take back. Under God's law never changed. His word has never changed. But out of His mercy, He will extend your life or whatever. He just extended your grace to you. But if He decides to slam you down, you're done. Now what you're seeing there is that road being built. You need to study your Bible to see what that means to you. That's because this is close. That thing was completed May the 10th of last year. It's done. It's got 2 foot of asphalt and 1 foot of concrete underneath of it. Now, why would they need such a heavy road?
Heavy equipment.
Heavy equipment. It can only be used for commercial and military use. There's nobody living on that. Nobody. The power lines that you see there don't have no juice in them until the Chinese throw the switch. I want to go back to this. But the law of nature says you are, as God is sovereign, and the world is sovereign, you are a sovereign individual, and out of that comes the republic. The word republic means a body of law. God's attribute is law, because He doesn't change. He's the same yesterday, today, and a million years from now. God ain't going to change. He says that's wrong, it stays wrong. He doesn't change. That's what the law. That's where the law republic comes from. And under a republican form of government, you have constitutional law. That be this, and it cannot be changed unless you go through an amendment process. That's the only way to change it. The amendment process equates to God's mercy. Okay, that's how you do it. Under positivism, which is the third, is a communist doctrine of law. Positivism says the state is the highest form of authority. And whatever the state gives, the state can take away. Okay? And under positivism, you have something called civil rights. Have you heard that before? There's a difference between constitutional rights and civil rights. Under positivism, the law changes with each new generation. Well, trying to define a generation may be a bit problematic. Some say 20 years, some say 50, some say 100. So can you see the confusion in our country today? It's a mess. Something to think about. During the American Revolution, or prior to that, there was an incident, I think it was in Boston, where some British soldiers killed some Americans. And they were tried by the colonialists for killing the Americans. Right after that, the king transferred the authority to try British troops into London, and you had to go to England to try them. Today, a federal agent is immune from any prosecution. Does that sound reminiscent of something? Ruby Ridge, Waco, Texas. Okay?
They take them out to state court.
Right.
Whatever state your crime's committed in, the federals take that agent, get him out of state court.
Exactly.
Get him in the federal.
You cannot try a federal agent in a state court. This is why this is not constitutional. The British did the same thing, and our ancestors took up muskets to stop it. What's going on in Nevada right now? I hope you know about what's going on out there.
Yeah.
And there's more of it getting ready to go in Texas that you haven't heard about yet. But you're getting ready to. They're getting ready to take thousands of acres down there. Getting ready to. In southern Missouri, they got stuff going on down there too. There's no end to what's going to stop this. I'm just about out of time, folks, so I got to hurry here. Obama, he said if he doesn't get what he wants, he says, I have a pen and an executive order. There's not one thing in there, ladies and gentlemen, gives him the authority to do that.
That's right.
There's no such thing as an executive order.
That's right.
That's the reason I left the military. I told my commander I'm not going to obey an undocumented president.
Right.
And I left. I took 2 years early retirement because I won't do it. This next election, folks, 2014 is not so much important, but the one in 2016, you had better choose right. In my opinion, there won't be one after that, because of what I'm telling you right there. It has started. The United States is about to have an economic collapse, and I'll get in that at the end of this if I can, if I have sufficient time.
You've got about 25 minutes.
25 minutes. There's something called a honey trap. A honey trap is something where you throw the bait out there, and it looks so enticing, you take it because you just got to have it, but it will kill you. It's like the praying mantis, the female praying mantis, and the mantis, the male. When they get through doing their business, she bites his head off. Don't get no ideas, please. Yeah, she got it. Don't do that. Right now in the United States, most chiefs of police and sheriffs and lieutenants and above will go to the FBI Academy. When they go to the FBI Academy, they come back brainwashed for some reason. Now, I know the St. Louis County Police has that policy. I do not know about the rest of them, but I know just about every sheriff will go to the FBI Academy. Okay, I don't know that all chiefs go, but I do know they do. A lot of them do go. And there is a beginning of
about
a
elected sheriffs?
Pardon?
Elected sheriffs?
Yeah,
Or
all of them
appointed
do.
ones?
All of them do, just about. I'm not going to have time to go into this, I don't think, no matter what I want to do. So I'm just going to briefly hit this. There's something called, let me get out of this real quick. I do want to show you a meeting between Colonel North and Jack Brooks.
this where he saw the list of the countries they're going to take down?
No. This is an exchange when I was in Nicaragua.
Not
Oh, sorry about that. If I have my wife over doing this, I'm going to have this problem. Sorry for the down here.
Where's the plane that's supposed to went down?
Now you might want to listen to this.
Reagan was elected to the presidency. He installed Louis Giuffrida as head of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Giuffrida was an old cold warrior from Reagan's California days, whose specialty was suppression of unrest and dissent. Giuffrida, North, and George Bush began to turn FEMA into an instrument of domestic anti-terrorism.
You're dealing with a group of people in the Reagan administration who equated political dissent with treason, and who cannot differentiate between emergency procedures, which I think everyone agrees are necessary, and suppressing political dissent. And with North and Poindexter and Casey, we had a group of people who saw Americans who disagree with them as the enemy.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster? Mr. Chairman,
I believe the question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir?
That's Senator Inouye of Hawaii.
Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked.
I most respectfully request that that matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, certain arrangements can be made for an executive session.
And tragically, the only member who got close was Jack Brooks, and he was stopped by the chairman.
He was immediately out the door, and this is about the last thing I'm going to have time for. This is Rex 84. This goes along with something you may want to write down called Operation Garden Plot. This is Rex 84. You can read it yourself. It goes right along. This is not a joke, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a joke. I personally, and many people that I work with, very, very, very close people that I know, expect an imminent collapse of the United States. Imminent. I don't know when it will come, but it's going to come. It will come. It may be one major event. It may be a series of events, but it's going to happen. Every day that you tarry. If you are a Christian, every day that you wake up and you're on the side of your bed, if you're doing like me, you're scratching. Every time a foot hits the ground, all of hell should shake. When that other foot comes down, the world should tremble from a Christian waking up. You need to be out there doing something. And I don't care whether you're a Christian or not. I personally believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord Savior, but I'm also a killer. I've killed a lot. And if I need to, I'll kill a whole bunch more. If you don't want to get killed, don't show up in front of me. It's that simple. I have no qualms with it. God did not raise me to be a coward. No questions. Not now. There comes a time when you got to man up. They're going to take your kids from you and put them in indoctrination camps. They're going to do it. It's going to happen. And there's nothing you're going to do to stop it because we've waited too long. I see a lot of gray-haired people in here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a 50-year fight. All of us are not going to survive it. Dan Page won't. So what you do now is for your children. Has nothing to do with you. You got to get the me out of the way. You got to get in the fight to be in the fight. This 2016 election is extremely important. I have not voted for a Republican in 35 years. And I will not do it again. That's just me. I vote for the individual. You've got to get in the fight, ladies and gentlemen, at the state level. You've got to get your head out of the game at the federal level. It's too late. You've got to get in at the state, at the county. You've got to get involved with the school boards. There's something I call justification. You're not justified in divorcing your wife until you've had a heart-to-heart talk with her to see what the issues are. If she's mad about you, something that she's giving you the stuck-up nose, what's wrong? You're not justified in slapping her upside the head or you until you talk it out. Of course, you're never justified in slapping anybody anyway. You're not justified in filing for bankruptcy until you've attempted to pay all your bills off. The reason I'm telling you this, you're not justified going to the bullet box right off the bat. There's a lot of things we can do to stop this. God is all-powerful. If you get right with Him, He can make things happen for you. If you don't, you will go to the bullet box. And I only know maybe one or two people in here that's seen combat. You don't want to see it. You do not want my kind of memories. You don't. I'm just telling you. You don't know what it's like to see a flood of humanity. Floods of them. For those of you who have diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, kidney disease, you're dead. Your maximum effective lifespan is 24 hours by the time this thing hits. That's all you got. And this is going to happen. Operation Garden Plot goes and talks a lot about the continuity of government. The continuity of government is a concept where those in power are going to protect themselves against you. And every time you do something they don't like, they become more oppressive. When you find out they become more oppressive, you do something. It keeps ratcheting up. We're all being funneled. I want to talk to you real quickly about the last 60 hours of a nation, and then I'm done. Okay? And I'm going to do this from memory because I don't have time to go into it. We've all had people that have died, and we've watched them maybe linger with cancer or heart disease or something. And we say to ourselves, they're getting close. Is that pretty right?
Yep.
The last 60 hours of a nation has the same thing. I was the very first soldier. You can look at that. I was the very first ones into Afghanistan when the war started. I was already there. And I will tell you about what I know about 9/11. I told you I would. Colonel Kappel, a full-bird colonel, commander of SOC Europe, that's Special Forces Command Europe, flew into Bosnia. And he assembled all of the SF guys under one up in the greenhouse. That will be in that building over there. He assembled us all in there. And this was in 1999. This was August the 1st, if I remember correctly. He says, "Gentlemen," no men, sorry, "there's about to be an attack upon the United States." And he put on a presentation like I'm putting on you. And he put up on the screen all the people that were going to be involved in it. They were already there. 19 of them were from Saudi Arabia. Only one of them was from somewhere else. But we attacked Afghanistan. That sounds logical to me.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia sent them in, go blow up Afghanistan. And he says, after that happens, the United States will be forever changed. And this man was highly respected. With that in mind, he went down to Charlie Ramp. That'd be the place to go home on. He flew home and retired. He said, "I'm not going to be part of what America's going to turn into." 30 days later, you know what happened. Me and my team flew into Afghanistan. We started calling in B-52 airstrikes on Tora Bora Mountains. And you know the rest of it. I've been over there 5 times. There were no weapons of mass destruction. Did not exist. The federal government's definition of a weapon of mass destruction is a 50 caliber machine gun. I got them at home. Sorry, just what it is. Where are they at? 14 years later, there's no weapons of mass destruction. Syria don't have them. Nobody has them. We got satellites in the sky. Nobody tracked them. They don't exist. So why did we go? That's the big question. In Saddam Hussein's trial in The Hague, it was proven he had nothing to do with the World Trade Towers. Germany told Bush. They warned him of it. And it did not come from Saddam Hussein, but yet we attacked Afghanistan for 3 months and we immediately went into Iraq. Why? There's no weapons of mass destruction. That man was hung. But you know what he said that really interested me? He says, you know, I've done a lot of things. I've killed a lot of people. But he says, I've never murdered 50 million of my own people. Who do you think he was talking to? Us. So there was no weapons of mass destruction. Didn't happen. He was cleared by our own State Department of having anything to do with 9/11. So why did we go? World government, folks. Yep. Anybody that resisted is dead, including you. I know there's a big target on my back. I know that. I still carry a secret clearance. I just left Fort Leonard Wood, and I am totally done. I'd like to show you some more, but I'm out of time. I went down there 3 days ago because I get briefed every 6 months. I still do. And I talked to my companion, CSM. He says, Dan, we're bringing in 1,000 Spetsnaz a week. And that's what those guys are right here, Spetsnaz. I did time with them. He says, we're bringing in 1,000 a week. He said, this thing between the U.S. and Ukraine is a ruse. He said, of course, you know that. I said, yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. It may be that international event that we're waiting on. He said it's all. He said there's 18,000 of them at Fort Leonard Wood right now, and there is. They're all over the place. Fort Carson, Colorado has 25,000. Fort Polk, Louisiana has, I think, 1,400. They will kill you. They will kill you. And now let me give you the last thing I want to tell you when the nation crumbles. You're going to start to see more. The news media is going to start banging on something. Could be Ukraine, could be, we don't know. That's how psychological warfare works. They talk about this, and this is happening over here. It's called a distraction. Incidentally, if you want anything that I've got a list here. We can do this 3 ways. You can write down your name, phone number, and address. I can mail it to you. I can send it to you in digitals, or you can get with Mrs. Butler or Doc and give them their name and address. Could you pass that around? And then I will burn him copies of everything I got that I don't have time to go into. So number one is there's going to be an emphasis upon international events. The news media is going to pound it. The second thing is you're going to start to see a group or a person guilty of racism or something along those lines. We're going to start pounding on that. They want your attention over here. The third thing you're going to start to see is people being arrested for domestic terrorism. The fourth thing you're going to see, and this is what I got to talk to the ladies about. It's what I call ancient hates. Ancient madness, ancient revenge. When these things start to happen, people are going to start rioting. The EBT cards are going to shut down. Can you imagine what's going to happen in North St. Louis and St. Louis County when the EBT cards go down, when the ATM machines don't work? Walmarts in Illinois and other places had some problems with that already. Think about that, what's going to happen. When the inner cities start to ignite, people are going to start killing people they don't like. And I'm going to warn the ladies on something. And this always gets me in trouble, but I got to tell you. This domestic violence stuff, every time a man turns around and gets jammed up by his wife on this, you are heading for troubles, ladies. A man can be arrested now for domestic property damage, domestic peace disturbance, domestic destruction of property, so forth and so forth. And so how can you do that in your own house? You can be arrested for domestic trespassing. I've seen people with lines down the middle of the house. Stupid. If you don't like each other that much, just kill each other and get it over with. Problem solved. Get it done. Don't be wasting cops' time. Just shoot each other and get it over with. Okay? That's the way I feel about it. Don't tell the colonel that.
Major, is this going to go nuclear? Full-blown
just hold on. No questions right now. All right. So that's the fourth thing that's going to happen. Okay? Contractors are going to come in. They'd be me. People like me, but on the other side. They're going to kill you. You're going to start seeing people, that person sitting next to you a few years from now will not be sitting there because they're going to be gone. because somebody like me is going to come in and kill you. For all you wannabes out here who think you're the baddest thing in the world, I got news for you. You're going to meet bad. Not that bad can't be killed, but when you're talking with somebody who does this 24/7 every day of their life, they get pretty good at it.
Right.
Not somebody who just does it every now and then. I've seen grown men go out and buy all the latest widgets. I've seen guys in the Army do this. You can always tell the rookie. He's got the latest crap on. And the minute the first round, stage left. Stick to the basics. You don't need the most expensive gun. Don't need all that. You just need the one that you'll train with, one that works, and one that you'll use. That's all you need. The last thing comes in is when the main force comes in, and it's all over with. And all this will happen in less than 60 days or 60 hours. The last 60 hours, because that's what we did in Iraq. We brought everybody in, we assembled it, and then we hit it. Can you imagine what those people thought when they started seeing this massive army assembled around it? Can you imagine the fear in those people's eyes? We used to look down there in telescopes at those people's face. You could see the fear. We killed 32,000 people in one night. When the B-52s came in and the A-10 Warhawks came in, 32,000 people died in one night. Think about it. And incidentally, the states that are going to be attacked are those states passing laws restricting federal government. The 21 states that have filed to secede from the Union, that's the targets. That's where they're coming. If you are deducting tithes from your, if you are deducting your tithes from your tax, they're coming to your house because that means you're a religious person. The definition of a terrorist is a white male, one who believes in Jesus Christ, one who believes in the Second Amendment, one who believes in a third party. That is the definition of a terrorist. I'm going to stop. I thank you all. I can't go on no more. I appreciate it. I'll open it up for questions. I know Doc says we're on a short leash here, so it's up to you after that. Yes, sir.
If you capture one of these Russian special forces, do they have tattoos on their body?
Sir, they could have a tattoo on their butt. I don't know.
No, but I'm saying...
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't answer your question. I don't know.
Is this going to go nuclear, chemical, or biological, full-blown?
It probably... Battlefield nuclear weapons are very small. They only designed to kill about 10 square miles.
So it ain't going to be like Cold War, thermonuclear winter?
I have no idea. I don't know. I can't answer your question. I don't know. Yes.
Something I asked you on the phone was, how do we get police, fire, and paramedics involved with Oath Keepers and to help us to help the people in our communities or something like that?
Well, to tell you the truth, I didn't know that this was going to be an Oath Keepers. I thought this was just a church meeting. To tell you the truth, I don't know. An Oath Keepers among law enforcement, I don't know what their opinion is on them, so I can't say.
Yeah.
But what I would do, I would simply I would go down to the police department, and I would probably go to the police academy, the civilian academy. And how you present yourself, if you come off as somebody really odd to policemen are very cynical. I know I am. I don't trust nobody, and I hate everybody. So I hate y'all too. I hate everybody. I'm into diversity. I kill everybody. I don't care. But I would go down to the police department, get to know them, and just let yourselves be known that you're not some extremist organization, because the news media has you where they want. So you have to combat that. There's something called 80-10-20 or 97-3. It's what I call the 97%ers are going to do whatever the federal government wants. Right. 3% will not. On the other hand, you got the 80% who will, the 20% who don't care one way or the other, and the 10% will resist. So you have to present yourself to them on an individual basis rather than as a group, I think. And just explain your views. Keep it simple. Don't get way out there theoretical and stuff. Talk about those things that you know, and just stick to the issues, I think. Next question. Any more?
Yeah.
Jim.
Sergeant Major, have you seen anything as far as a memorandum come down through the Army that makes Tea Party members or Christians that share their view within the military subjects to court martial?
Yes, that's true. The Army has a policy now. It's called proselytizing. If you are a Christian, you cannot mention Jesus anywhere in the barracks, on military property, have a Bible displayed or anything like that. That's true. Oh, yes, that's true, yes. People are being court-martialed and separated for that. That's true.
Is it possible just to defund this by simply not paying taxes?
No, that's another issue I'm not going to get into. It's justified in paying taxes. Jesus said he pulled a coin out of the fish's mouth and said, "Pay up, shut up." That's my definition of it. Yeah, taxes are legitimate. There's nothing wrong with paying taxes. That's just the way that it is.
So what happens, because good men like you are all retiring from the military, so what kind of military do you have left then?
Sodomites and females.
That are willing to do whatever they tell
End of statement.
Should we stand our ground or should we run? What should we do?
You know, I can't tell you what to do. I will tell you I got a big bullseye on my back because I forgot to do this. I do not represent the St. Louis County Police Department. I do not speak for them. This is all my opinion. I do not speak for the U.S. military, the federal government, or the president. I forgot to tell you this because I have to get permission from the Army to do this. I'm theirs. They own me. So I can't tell you what to do on that. Here's what I believe. The Scriptures teach us, and this is the best example I can give, every knee is going to take a bow to the Lord Jesus Christ. And you got to face Him, so you do what you think He would be proud of. Sir?
We've seen a huge purge of the leadership in the military.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people, including me, wondering when this stuff hits the fan, there's going to be a whole lot of guys that stand down in the military and in the police force. What kind of percentage do you kind of think?
Well, that's going to be real difficult. I would say that they would have 90% going to come and kill you because there is a purge that you cannot believe in the military right now. The Marine Corps, whether you like it or not, I don't care what branch of military you come from, is the guardians of America. They are, I really hate to say this, but I got to say it, they are the finest fighting force the world's ever known. They really are. They're good. If you want to go that way, you tell a Marine, well, he's got it. But they are being feminized. And I'm not picking on women, okay? But they are being destroyed because of females who are not happy with being women. And ladies, I'm going to tell you right now, you better enjoy your femininity. Because the day is going to come when you're just going to want to sit and put smelly good on and just relax. It's not going to happen. So I can't answer that. But there was, I was going to show it to you, but I do not have time, called the 29 Palm Survey. And they were asked by the United Nations Combat Survey Team, because I took it too, are you willing, this was done under Bush, by the way. Well, now I've actually got the survey here. And Bush asked them, if I issue an executive order telling you to shoot those people who will not turn their firearms, are you willing to do it? At that time, 75% of the Marine Corps said no. Bush was furious. So he started cleaning the Marine Corps out. For the first time in history, they had, this is a couple years ago, the Marine Corps Commandant has always been an infantry soldier, always. But it's no longer that. Now they got a loghead in there, a logistics guy who don't know crap about combat.
Right.
And he's been doing everything Obama tells him to do. So the good Marines are being pushed. And the Marines are not a large force anyway. I think they're about 80, 90,000. It's 170? Well, they've gone up then. But they're not that big, but they are the finest fighting force. So if something ain't broke, why would you want to change it? Now, we got our first female Green Beret, our first female Ranger. Ladies, you're going down the wrong road on this because I used to carry a 90-pound backpack in there. That's all gone. Sir, you had a question.
I was going to ask you, earlier in the talk, you talked about the president being in charge of the Army and the Navy, but you exclude the Marine Corps and Air Force.
Right.
Why?
Because they come under, they come under, the Marines come under the Department of the Navy. So there's no Posse Comitatus Act on them. They can do whatever they want, and the Air Force did not exist. So they can do what they want. That said, the Patriot Act eliminated the Posse Comitatus. The 2012 National Defense Authorization Act, signed by Republicans, for you Republicats in here, twice. You can now be held incognito indefinitely. No lawyers. No handwritten mail. No Twitter. No Facebook. That's going to kill most people right there. Okay? No nothing. No family. You're not told. You're gone forever. Incidentally, there's a movie out with Mr. Stallone and somebody. I forgot who the other guy is. Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's called Escape. You're reading my thoughts.
Yes.
It's called Escape. That boat exists. It's real. That boat does exist. I'm telling you for a fact. I know it didn't. I'm just telling you, I know it for a fact it exists. It's real. Sir.
Pondered and wondered, the military isn't supposed to be used internally in the United States, but it looks like the police force is. have been militarized and desensitized against being deployed against the United States. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, that's inaccurate, because the military can now be used. That's what I just said. There is no such thing as posse comitatus. It doesn't exist. The military can and will be used in the United States. But who you better watch for is the contractors. Folks, I'm going to have to end it. My time is out. Thank you.
I would like to present Sergeant Major Dan Page with one of our Oath Keepers. What's that look good on his St. Louis County Police uniform?
Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, disturbing news this week from the CIA saying that we've severely underestimated the scope and size of ISIS, and that new intelligence shows that the terror army is actually 3 times the size of those initial reports saying the group had no more than 10,000 fighters. No doubt this will have a big impact on our military strategy, with some lawmakers, like Senator John McCain, saying as long as ISIS seizes more territory, it will continue to grow and attract more followers. Earlier, I spoke with the senator about the challenges we're facing right now.
Well, first of all, it's not too surprising because we have had, and I have had information that because of their success, they have been attracting men, particularly young men, in some cases women, from all over the world, particularly from all over the Middle East. So their success has been a huge magnet for young people who have been indoctrinated by radical Islam. So now what do we need to do? I think we need to understand the enormity of this challenge. It's going to take a lot more boots there on the ground, not American combat forces such as the 82nd Airborne, but forward air controllers and intelligence people and drones and a lot of other capabilities. Finally, when he says that this situation, when the president says that this is like Somalia and Yemen, that means the president doesn't understand the dimensions of the challenge.
Because a lot of people have been very surprised by those remarks from the speech earlier this week, saying that those 2 campaigns were not that successful at all.
They were not successful, and they are terrorist organizations which over time can be contained. ISIS has to be destroyed. Otherwise, they are a direct threat to the United States of America. Now, whether it is a credible, immediate threat, I'm getting a little tired of that argument, because the fact is that on Twitter and on Facebook, ISIS is encouraging people to come to the United States and attack it. And unfortunately, our southern border is not secure, and that poses a long-term danger.
Well, I wanted to bring that up because I didn't hear anything in the speech this week from the president about beefing up the borders. And I was very concerned about this, as are others, because there are reports, as you pointed out, that people are already coming over to the United States, crossing the border. Do you think Congress has to push harder in this session to push for action to beef up the borders right now?
Well, I wish we would, and as you know, I am one of the architects of comprehensive immigration reform. Because of this threat, and because of the children showing up on our border, and because of the insecurity, I believe we have to get a 90% effective control of our border, 100% awareness, and we can do that within a couple of years.
Well, you know, much has been said over the last few days of John Kerry's view that we are not at war with ISIS, calling this a counterterrorism operation. Why the reluctance to call it war if the aim is to destroy ISIS?
I have no idea, except to say that I think it's pretty obvious that ISIS believes that they're in a war against us. Remember Baghdadi, their leader, when he left our Camp Bucca in Iraq, our prison camp, he said, "See you in New York." There's no doubt of what their intentions are. It's again this sort of fecklessness of this administration in facing up to the terrorist threat posed by ISIS in particular. There's comparison with Somalia and Yemen, the reluctance, in fact, the president overruling his national security team on arming and equipping the Free Syrian Army.
Let me talk to you now about the coalition that the president's trying to put together. Despite efforts to proclaim there's going to be a strong coalition of allies working with the U.S., key Middle East players like Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan are, for the most part, staying on the sidelines and offering lukewarm support to the president's expanded military campaign. What impact going forward is this going to have?
He's got a huge credibility problem, Uma, and that is when he announced to one and all and had, in fact, some of these countries ready to strike Syria with us over the issue of chemical weapons, where he said, by the way, if they crossed the red line, they wouldn't have to get rid of the chemical weapons. He said if they crossed the red line, he would strike them, and announced he was going to strike them because they crossed the red line, and then reversed. That had a huge impact on these countries in the region. The fact is, and a little straight talk, they don't trust us. They don't trust us to carry through. And they were probably not very well satisfied with the president's statements at his speech, particularly relating ISIS to Yemen and Somalia.
Let me ask you really quickly about the Free Syrian Army. One quick question. There are a lot of folks, though, who are very concerned that arming this opposition group will lead to further concerns, because how do you trust the current crop of people who are part of this army? How do you know that it's okay to give military hardware at a time when it remains still unclear about what their long-term motives are? Who's going to vet these people?
Well, first of all, I've vetted a number of them because I know them. Second of all, it's just an excuse for people who don't want to act to say that these people are not to be trusted. Look, they've been I can't tell you what they have been through. The hundreds and even thousands of that have been killed and slaughtered with these barrel bombs and tortured to death by Bashar Assad. They can be trusted. There are groups of them to be trusted. They aren't as good as they used to be because of our failure to help them. And they can be vetted, and we can do it quickly. And obviously there are some risks. But what's our other option here? If someone who says we don't want to do it because we can't trust the Free Syrian Army, then what is your option, sir and ma'am, to in how we're going to attack ISIS in an effective fashion? And by the way, they've got to be able to attack Bashar Assad as well, who is working with the Iranians to destroy them.
And our thanks to Senator McCain.
Good evening and welcome to The Right Side, the show where we talk about today's news, views, and trends from an admittedly conservative perspective. My name is Chris Pareja, and this evening I'm joined by the founder of Jihad Watch, Robert Spencer. We're going to talk a little bit about the religion of peace, better known as Islam, and some of the myths or some of the things that need to be kind of sorted out so we can have a better understanding of really what's entailed in the religion of peace. Robert, thanks for joining us this evening.
Hey, thank you, Chris. I'm very happy to be here.
So you're a highly sought-after speaker, and people try to bring you in around the country and probably other parts of the world as well. Tell me what set you off on this path of this enlightenment.
Actually, my family is from the last great Islamic empire, the Ottoman Empire, and when I was growing up, my grandparents would tell me stories about life there and how wonderful it was. And then I asked the inevitable question, well then, why are you here? Why did you leave? And they said, well, we were exiled. And they couldn't actually tell me why they were exiled, or they wouldn't tell me. I was very young then. But it was something that sparked a curiosity in me, and I started reading up about the history of that region and the Ottoman Empire in general, and ultimately I discovered that they had been asked to leave because they had declined to convert to Islam, and that this was part of much larger exiles of non-Muslims from what is now Turkey in the aftermath of World War I. And that set me into a study of Islam to understand, well, what would lead people of a certain religion to want to kick out or kill all the people who were not of this religion, and started reading the Quran when I was in college. And found the whole thing fascinating, although I didn't convert. It wasn't really fascinating on that level, but fascinating just as a matter of what would compel people to believe in this, what people would find attractive in it, and so on. And kept studying it until, of course, as one thing leads to another, now this is all that I do.
So that's an interesting question. There are movements across the United States and around the world where there are major pushes to recruit people into Islam. What would encourage them to join the religion of peace?
Well, there's several things. You know, we're here by Marin County, and you may recall right after 9/11, when the U.S. troops went into Afghanistan, they found the Marin County Mujahid, John Walker Lind, a young man from this area, who had grown up in a household that I think is probably rather typical of households in Marin County and many people across the country, with I think left him kind of unmoored and without any sense of values or sense of what was important in life or sense of right and wrong. And here came Islam into his life with its absolute certainties about what's good and what's not, what's right and what's wrong, and a sharp rebuke to the sort of anything goes culture that he had grown up in. And I think that he found that extremely attractive, and many others like him do.
And so you're saying that instead of having the pathway of anything goes and there should be no rules because people lose self-esteem, etc., in that kind of a scenario, that actually the structure of an organized religion was attractive to him.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Islam is a complete way of life. It is not just a Sunday observance or a Friday observance in the case of Islam, not just uttering certain prayers and so on. Islam is a religion that has laws and rules for every aspect of human behavior. Now, for some people, they think that that's great, because it frees them from the confusion and the uncertainty of the modern world, and sets out so that there's an answer for everything. They don't have to think, they can shut off, and they follow the rules.
But in most organized religions, the focus is on the people who are actually observing the religious values or living the religious lifestyle. Islam's a little bit different in the percentage of time spent toward people that are not of the faith. Isn't that right?
Well, Islam is tremendously concerned with unbelievers. If you read the Quran, pretty much on every page of the Quran, you can open the Quran, the holy book of Islam, to really any random page, and you will find, I guarantee you, some denunciation of the unbelievers. And the Quran is also unique among the great religious texts of the world in mandating warfare against those unbelievers and their subjugation under the rule of Islamic law. And the Quran says, Muhammad is the apostle of Allah. Those who follow him are merciful to one another, but ruthless to the unbelievers. That's chapter 48, verse 29. Now, this makes for unfortunately, quite a bit of unrest wherever Muslims and non-Muslims are together, and this has been the case throughout Islamic history.
Yeah, that seems to be a little bit of a departure from normally accepted organized religions. Go to war with people who don't believe versus try to gently persuade them to join you along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And see, this dichotomy, it runs all the way through Islam. For example, you know, in terms of Christianity, you have the New Testament where it says that God desires all people to be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth. The Quran actually says just the opposite, that God says in the Quran that if we had willed, we meaning God, if we had willed, we could have guided all men to the truth, but instead we will fill hell with jinns and men. Jinns are little spirit beings, genies. But he's saying he created people to torture them in hell, and that was their purpose. He could have guided them to the truth, but he wants them to go to hell. Now, the upshot for that is that when a pious, believing Muslim reads this, and then he sees the non-Muslims in the world, he's not taught to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. He's not taught to turn the other cheek. He's taught to be harsh, ruthless to them, and to wage war until they pay the jizya, a special tax, with willing submission and feel themselves subdued, which is also from the Quran, chapter 9, verse 29. So he views them with hatred and contempt and commits violence against them. Obviously, we have to say that not every Muslim does this any more than every Christian loves his enemies and turns the other cheek. But nonetheless, Muslims who do read these things and take them to heart as being the eternal and perfect words of Allah, they're the ones that have been problematic for the non-Muslim world all around the world today.
So what's interesting is you've said so many things that cause so many questions to float around in my head, but let's go to that concept of truth. Because what you're saying is other religions, Christianity, the Jewish faith, etc., they talk about truth. And people tend to project their view of the world on others. So we would assume, if we come from a Judeo-Christian background or others, that truth is the way that we are supposed to live our lives. But there's a little bit of a different perspective from an Islamic perspective about truth and truth within the Islamic community versus interactions outside of the community. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely, Chris. You know, you have this very sharp dichotomy between the believer and the unbeliever. And so that also carries through to the understanding of how much each should have access to the truth. Chapter 3, verse 28 of the Quran says, "Let not the believers take unbelievers as their friends and protectors, unless they are doing it to guard themselves against them." And that phrase, "unless they're doing it to guard themselves against them," has been interpreted in the Quranic commentaries by mainstream Muslim scholars whose works are read today to say that under certain circumstances one may lie to the unbelievers, deceive the unbelievers. Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, said that lying was permissible. A husband could lie to his wife, and you could lie during wartime. And so when we hear these Muslim spokesmen in the United States saying the U.S. is at war with Islam, as even the head of the Council on American Islamic Relations has said, then that is what they're saying is that means it is permissible for us to lie to you. And they do. And there's deception on a grand scale. And when we, it's also very important, if I may, you mentioned that people tend to think of these things from their own frame of reference. That's one of our chief downfalls. That, for example, you hear President Obama and before him President Bush, and they've both spoken at some length about the great Abrahamic faiths, and that we all have a common father in Abraham, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
But there was a departure.
There's a huge departure because, when Bush talked about the great Abrahamic faiths, he was thinking of the book of Genesis. And the book of Genesis says that Abraham became the father of many nations. The Quran is what Muslims read. They don't read the book of Genesis. And the Quran does not say Abraham became the father of many nations. It actually says Abraham, this is chapter 60, verse 4, Abraham is an excellent example to you when he said to his father, "There is enmity and hatred between us and you forever until you worship only Allah." And so Abraham, for the Muslims, is a model of hating the unbelievers, which is not exactly what Bush and Obama have in mind when they talk about the great Abrahamic faiths.
Right. And so, the things that you've outlined about how they treat the non-believers or people of the book, as sometimes they're termed, or kafirs, or I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation, none of those behaviors that you've outlined sound very peaceful. Why would people believe that Islam is indeed the religion of peace?
Well, the people believe that Islam is a religion of peace in the first place because Muslims insist that it is, and they keep saying so. And every so often at my website, Jihad Watch, where I put up news and commentary about jihad activity, I come across a story about some Muslim head of state, the president of Pakistan or of Malaysia or Indonesia or somewhere, saying Islam is a religion of peace. Islam is a religion of peace and tolerance and justice and so on. And this is constantly insisted upon. And so it's kind of like the repetition of it alone establishes it. But they have to keep insisting on it because it's so obviously false when Muslims, in the name of Islam, and motivated according to their own words by the texts and teachings of the Quran and Muhammad, these things, they commit violence and they justify them. It's not a religion of peace. But what they mean, these heads of state and others who say this, is in the first place the outcome. The peace that they're talking about is after the jihad warfare. When the whole world has been subdued under the rule of Islamic law, then peace will reign. And so it is a religion of peace. They just have to fight a few wars to get there.
Exterminate a few folks, and then it'll be okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's more peaceful when people don't object to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk for a second about the correlations between a couple of books that people believe in. Now, there's the Quran, and then we also have the Bible, and we have Revelations versus the idea of the return of the 12th Imam. Can you cover that slightly? And then also why, if you believe it would be uncommon for someone like Ahmadinejad to celebrate and try to bring forth the coming of the 12th Imam.
Well, the 12th Imam in Shiite Islam, the Shiites are only 10 to 15% of the Muslims. But the 12th Imam in Shiite Islam is often identified with the Mahdi, which is also a figure in Sunni Islam. And they both share the idea that Jesus is going to come back at the end of the world, just as the Christians do. But the big difference is that Jesus, in the Muslim scheme of things, is a Muslim prophet who taught Islam, and his followers twisted and hijacked his teachings to create Christianity. And Jesus is going to come back in the company of the 12th Imam in Shiite eschatology, and in the company of the Mahdi, according to both the Sunnis and the Shiites. And Jesus is going to break all the crosses, kill the pigs, and abolish the jizya. Now, I mentioned the jizya before. That's the special tax that the Quran specifies that the non-Muslims have to pay to the Muslims who rule over them. And killing the pigs means that the food laws will be enforced upon the Christians, and they won't be able to eat pork anymore. And break the cross, because according to the Quran, Jesus did not die on the cross. He only seemed to. And it's an insult to Allah to say that he would allow one of his prophets to be killed in so ignominious a manner. And so Jesus is essentially going to abolish Christianity and Islamize the world. The 12th Imam makes this even more dangerous, because the 12th Imam is the savior figure of Shiite Islam. The 12th Imam is actually a historical person. In Shiite Islam, the Imams, in Sunni Islam, an Imam is like the local parish priest or the local rabbi or the local minister in the local house of worship. He's just the local Imam. But in Shiite Islam, the Imam is the successor of Muhammad. And there were 12 Imams after Muhammad. They have to be a member of Muhammad's household, that is a relative of some kind, and they share something of his prophetic power. The 12th Imam was a little kid in the 9th century who fell down a well and died. But according to Shiite eschatology, he didn't die. He's hidden in that well. Ahmadinejad used to go to the well to talk to him. The well is the area of it is known, and he's going to come out of the well at a time when the Muslims are being persecuted more ferociously than they have ever been persecuted before. The problem with that idea is that some of the mullahs in the high command in Iran have enunciated the view that they could nuke Tel Aviv and destroy Israel and sustain retaliatory nuclear fire that could kill 10 to 15 million Iranians, and they could sustain that. You kill 10 to 15 million in Israel, it's gone. But 10 to 15 million Iranians would not only be something they could sustain, but it would be the persecution that would trigger the return of the 12th Imam. So they think by killing millions of Muslims, by bringing about the killing of millions of Muslims, they can trigger this end-time scenario, which involves the destruction of Christianity and either the murder or the conversion to Islam of all non-Muslims.
And so people who believe this are people that we should just talk to politely, and that they'll just agree with whatever we say from a political perspective, right?
Chris, it's astoundingly naive that people discount this, but I think that a lot of the problem is that the people in the State Department, the people in Washington in general, they are non-religious secular types. They don't have any religion at all. They don't come from any religious background. And they tend to discount and deny the power of religious imperatives. And they don't understand. They can't even understand. They can't believe that these people take these kinds of teachings seriously. And they think, well, yes, they say that, but really we can deal with them. And, the fact is that they might be able to make a deal, but it will only be a deal that will redound to the advantage of the Islamic community, and one that will further weaken the non-Muslims, because the Islamic law, which they don't care about either, stipulates that Muslims can only make a truce with non-Muslims if the non-Muslims are about to convert to Islam, or if the Muslims are weak and need time to gather strength.
And we talked about the idea of being able to lie to your enemy to further Islam anyway, so even if they commit to it, crossing your fingers is okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about this political correctness and avoiding the topic of maybe the truth about some of the aspects of Islam. How does that play out in scenarios like Fort Hood, like the Boston bombing, like what's happening in Nairobi that they're still trying to sort out?
Well, look, in Nairobi, we just have seen a terrible massacre of people where the murderers actually had a quiz, and they asked people the name of Muhammad's mother. It was Amina bint Wahab, if you're ever in this situation.
Okay.
And they asked them to recite the Islamic profession of faith, which is there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet, in Arabic. And if they could do that, they would let them go. But if they couldn't, they would kill them. So they were clearly distinguishing Muslims from non-Muslims.
Everybody knows that information, though, right?
Well, then David Cameron, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, immediately says, this has nothing to do with Islam. And that's generally the consensus of the world community. The mainstream media, even though they had to report that because it was part of the story, has generally downplayed it and has been calling these people militants and so on, not even terrorists, much less Islamic jihadis.
Right.
So the problem is that, we might say, well, David Cameron, he doesn't want to insult the Muslims in Britain. Okay, but what are the consequences of that? We saw what the consequences of that were in Boston and at Fort Hood. At Fort Hood, we had a U.S. Army major, an Army psychiatrist, who was a Muslim, who had given abundant signs. He gave grand rounds, which is some sort of a teaching seminar that the Army psychiatrists have to give to their colleagues. And he was a psychiatrist, he was supposed to be talking about psychiatry. So there's all these Army psychiatrists in the room, and he starts talking about jihad. And everybody was shocked. Some people were very concerned. They thought that he might become violent at some point in the future.
Psychiatrists would know.
Yeah.
You'd think.
And he was in touch with Anwar al-Awlaki, who was the Al-Qaeda leader, who was involved with 9/11. Two of the 9/11 hijackers went to his mosque when he was an imam in Virginia. He was involved with various other jihad attacks on the U.S. And the FBI knew this, and they didn't do anything about it. Now, not only that, but his superiors kept giving Hassan, the Fort Hood murderer, glowing recommendations and saying, even, we can learn about Islam from this man. Now, why did they do this? Why did they discount the possibility that he could be violent when it was something people were saying? Because they knew if they reported him, then they would have been pilloried for being Islamophobic. And there would have been big stories and Time and Newsweek and on CBS, Islamophobia in the military. The Council on American Islamic Relations has called for a full investigation. All this guy was doing was expressing his Islamic faith, etc., etc., and their careers would have been ruined.
Yes.
And so for political correctness, to protect those guys' careers, 13 people are dead and 30 wounded at Fort Hood.
But it was just job-place violence.
That's right. Then the Obama administration compounds the problem by insisting that this is workplace violence, denying the Purple Heart benefits and the other benefits that the relatives of the victims would receive if it were classified as terrorism, which it obviously was. And the problem is that is a vivid illustration that this denial and obfuscation, it kills.
But it was just an isolated incident, right?
Same thing happened in Boston. In Boston, the Russians informed the FBI that Tamerlan Tsarnaev was in touch with jihadis and was a jihadi himself. But the FBI the year before had stripped all of its training manuals of any mention of Islam and jihad in connection with terrorism. So they hear from the Russians, this guy's a jihadi, and they probably thought, oh, how nice. He is interested in an interior spiritual struggle to better himself.
Yes.
And they had no idea. Or if they did have any idea, they didn't dare do anything about it because, again, they would have run afoul of the politically correct police, the Council on American Islamic Relations and others.
So since it's only okay to call Tea Partiers and Republicans terrorists, what should we call these other people? I mean, is jihadi the right term? Mujahideen? What do they call themselves? And what does that mean?
Jihadis. Mujahideen or jihadis. So they're calling themselves jihadis. I think that's what we should call them.
But what does it mean?
What does it mean? That's a very important question. Jihad means struggle in Arabic, and there are many, many struggles in Arabic, just like there are many struggles in English. You can struggle to quit smoking, you can struggle to lose weight, but you can also have the titanic civilizational struggle against communism. Same word. In Arabic, you can struggle in all those different ways, but the primary meaning of the struggle of jihad in Islamic law is warfare against unbelievers, to subjugate them under the rule of Islamic law.
Wow, that doesn't sound politically correct or friendly toward non-believers.
It is not, and it is taught in the major schools of Islamic law. It's taught in the Quran. It's taught by Muhammad. It's really a unanimous thing, and yet the denial is also unanimous.
So how do we go about, as normal citizens, helping to talk about these things in a context that would bring truth forward?
Well, we have to, I think, shed light on what the jihadis themselves do say, because they constantly cite the Quran and Muhammad to explain what they're doing and challenge Muslim communities in our own areas. How is it that you understand these passages? More importantly, what are you doing to teach your own people against this understanding of Islam you ostensibly reject? Because there is no program in any mosque in America right now to teach against Major Hassan's understanding of Islam, or Tamerlan Tsarnaev's, or Anwar al-Awlaki's. You would think that would be job one, that they, if they reject all that, they would be teaching against it and working against it. They aren't.
Well, we've given people a drink by the fire hose over the last few minutes. How can they find out more about you, Jihad Watch, and information that might be relevant to them as they go down this path of enlightenment as well?
Well, Chris, Jihad Watch has a website at jihadwatch.org, and it's updated many times daily with news and commentary on jihad activity. I also have 12 books. The most recent is Not Peace But a Sword, which is subtitled The Great Chasm Between Christianity and Islam. That is, a lot of people are engaged in dialogue, and they think religious dialogue will iron all this out if we just sit down and talk. And I explain some of the pitfalls of that and some of the things that the Christian side needs to know if they're going to engage in this dialogue intelligently and carefully.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for sharing so much wisdom and your passion about Jihad Watch, and we'll try to get people connected with you so they can learn more.
Thanks, Chris.
Appreciate
it's a pleasure.
it, Robert.
Thank you.
If you really want to understand the rape and slaughter being committed in the name of Allah by the Islamic State, you have to study the history of Muhammad and his companions, a history found in the Hadith and the Sirah literature. But you can get a pretty good outline of the Islamic State's message and tactics by reading the Quran, which Muslims believe to be the direct word of Allah. For those of you who don't have time to read the Quran, here's a top 10 list of the most essential verses for understanding ISIS. In the Bible, Jesus says that God loves everyone. In the Quran, not so much. Surah 3, verse 32. Say, obey Allah and the Apostle, but if they turn back, then surely Allah does not love the unbelievers. According to the Quran, Allah only loves obedient Muslims. I wonder why ISIS doesn't seem to have much love for non-Muslims. Believe it or not, Allah's complete lack of love for non-Muslims plays a role in how non-Muslims are to be treated. Surah 48, verse 29. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and those who are with him are severe against unbelievers and merciful among themselves. Those who are with Muhammad, i.e. Muslims, are severe against whom? Against unbelievers. They're merciful to whom? Only to their fellow Muslims. But politicians and the media just can't figure out why ISIS is so severe against non-Muslims. There are lots of ways to be severe against unbelievers. Here's one, Surah 4, verse 24. Also forbidden are women already married, except those captives and slaves whom your right hands possess. This may be confusing without the historical context, which you can read in Sunan Abu Dawud 2150. When Muhammad won the Battle of Autas, Allah had already revealed that Muslims were free to rape their female captives. But at Autas, the Muslim army captured certain women along with their husbands, and some of the Muslims started wondering if raping these women counted as adultery, because they were married. That's when Allah revealed Surah 4, verse 24, which says that married women are indeed forbidden as sex partners unless they're your captives. If they're your captives, rape them all you want. Allah couldn't conceivably care less that they're married. Heard about any groups raping their female captives recently? What about people who try to stop the Islamic State from establishing Sharia? Surah 5, verse 33. The punishment of those who wage war against Allah and His Apostle and strive to make mischief in the land is only this, that they should be murdered or crucified, or their hands and their feet should be cut off on opposite sides, or they should be imprisoned. This shall be as a disgrace for them in this world, and in the hereafter they shall have a grievous chastisement. Notice that there are several penalties, including death, crucifixion, and dismemberment, for the vague crime of making mischief in the land. Since the crime is vague, Muslim groups like ISIS can pack all kinds of offenses into this verse. And yet the U.S. State Department just put out a video making fun of ISIS for crucifying their enemies. When Muhammad was completely outnumbered, he had to put up with idolaters. But once he had the most powerful army in Arabia, the message of Islam became convert or die. Surah 9, verse 5 contains Allah's final marching orders on dealing with idolaters. When the sacred months have passed, slay the idolaters wherever you find them, and take them captive, and besiege them, and prepare for them each ambush. But if they repent and establish worship and pay the poor due, then leave their way free. Lo, Allah is forgiving, merciful. So kill them unless they convert to Islam. Sound familiar? Since idolaters have to convert or die, you might be wondering why ISIS gives Christians a third option, the option of paying jizya, tribute money. Surah 9, verse 29. Fight those who believe not in Allah, nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and His Messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth from among the people of the book. The people of the book are Jews and Christians, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. So the benefit of being a Jew or a Christian, according to Allah, is that you won't necessarily be slaughtered for refusing to convert. You have the option of paying tribute money to Muslims in acknowledgement of your inferiority. Is it just me, or is ISIS following the Quran to the letter? But ISIS doesn't just attack unbelievers. Muslims are also targeted. Why is that? Surah 9, verse 73. O Prophet, strive hard against the unbelievers and the hypocrites, and be unyielding to them. And their abode is hell, and evil is the destination. The Arabic for strive hard here is a form of the word jihad. So Muslims are commanded to wage jihad not only against unbelievers, but also against hypocrites, people who claim to be Muslims but aren't doing what Allah tells them to do. The penalty for hypocrisy can vary depending on the severity of the hypocrisy, but when Muslims deviate from core Islamic doctrine, they find themselves in the apostate category, and the penalty for apostasy is death. So when ISIS kills Muslims who aren't adhering to central Muslim doctrines, they're just doing what Allah commands. But what about all the peaceful, westernized Muslims who condemn killing in the name of Allah? Sadly, Islam isn't defined by westernized Muslims. It's defined by Allah, who says in Surah 9, verse 111, Surely Allah has bought of the believers their persons and their property for this, that they shall have the garden. They fight in Allah's way, so they slay and are slain. Allah defines believers as those who slay and get slain. They keep killing until they get killed. Doesn't sound much like our peaceful Muslim neighbors, but it sounds an awful lot like ISIS. Muslims are only allowed to seek peace when they aren't in a position to violently subjugate their enemies. Allah says in Surah 47, verse 35, Be not weary and faint-hearted, crying for peace, when you should be uppermost, for Allah is with you and will never put you in loss for your good deeds. When the Muslim community is strong enough to slay the idolaters and to subjugate the Jews and Christians and to fight the hypocrites, peace is not an option. If you seek peace when you should be uppermost, you won't have much ground to stand on when ISIS knocks on your door and tells you that you're a hypocrite. This final verse might seem out of place because it's not about rape or slaughter, but you can't really understand how the verses about rape and slaughter fit into Islam as a whole without understanding Surah 2, verse 106. Whatever communications we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, we bring one better than it or like it. Do you not know that Allah has power over all things? People in the West have been trying to condemn the Islamic State by quoting peaceful verses of the Quran. How can you guys call yourselves Muslims when the Quran